Hey guys, and welcome back to Unified Gaming. Now if this is your first time here, and you enjoy watching ESO gameplay, seeing new builds, or just want to get better at ESO itself, then start by subscribing now and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. Today guys, we're looking at my Soulbones Magicka Necromancer PVP build for the Dragonhold patch. This has been redesigned from the ground up running brand new sets, and it has taken into account everything I have learned from playing Magicka Necromancer, as well as embracing all of the changes over the past few patches. I feel that I've not only been able to maintain the damage from the previous build, but potentially increase it, and I feel that this new version has significantly increased resistances and penetration values, making it hit harder than before, but also be really hard to take down. I've also been able to increase the health and maintain similar sustain levels, allowing us to stay in the fight for even longer than before. As for our burst combo in this version, it is just as high, if not higher than before, even though Soul Assault and Dots were heavily nerfed. For me, this feels like the strongest Magicka Necromancer build I have made to date or have seen, and it is more than capable of holding its own in outnumbered situations or in a one-on-one match. I've also been able to increase our ultimate generation, and you'll also notice that our Magicka pool is rather high, around 40,000, as well as our penetration being 18,500 in CP and 15,000 in no CP. We also have a respectable 2,200 plus spell damage, and that is before continuous attack or weapon damage glyphs. So with all of this combined, it means we hit people really hard, probably harder than before, even though our tortoise might be slightly lower thanks to the high amount of penetration that we're running. All in all, this feels really great, and I feel that Necromancer is now somewhat viable, even though the class has a few issues. As with all of my build videos, I go through and show on screen a graphic showing where we are in the video so you can find the section that is relevant for you. I would however recommend watching the entire video today so you don't miss anything fundamental to the build, and pay special attention to the gear and skill selections, as these are key for the build running properly. Finally, if you are new here and you haven't done so already, consider subscribing by clicking the bottom right subscribe button on screen so you don't miss any future content, including more PvP builds. Now we're going to jump straight into that build guys. Now for our race, we are still a Breton. Breton for me is really good for no CP especially, giving off lots of sustain as well as max Magicka. You could however go as a high elf, and if you do go as a high elf, you will need to change your Mundus stone to be the recovery Mundus in order to accommodate this. That is the same for dark elf too. An Argonian could work, but you will lose quite a bit of damage, so kind of do bear that in mind. But those are kind of the main races. For me, Breton or high elf would be optimal. As for our skills, we have Ricochet Skull, Blast Bones, Invigorating Drain, Elemental Drain, Skeletal Arcanist, Soul Assault. On the back bar we run Summoner's Armour this time, Degeneration, Dampen Magic, Intensive Mender, Necrotic Potency, and Glacial Colossus. The Skull is our spammable, Blast Bones is our burst ability, Drain is our stun, so Vampire Drain here, Elemental Drain is a sort of debuff on the target and Magicka sustain, which is welcomed. Skeletal Arcanist is a damage over time ability, and it is also a sustain buff thanks to our Live in Death passive Undead Confederate, giving us sustain here. We then use Soul Assault as our big sort of burst ability, or execute if we need one. Again, this is really strong and this goes even higher. Back bar wise, we have Summoner's Armour. This is our defensive buff. It also reduces the cost of some of our skills. Degeneration is a damage over time and major sorcery. Dampen Magic is a big shield. This really helps us. Intensive Mender is a big sort of mini heal, like Breath of Life, kind of every couple seconds. Necrotic Potency is more ultimate generation and a small heal, but it's mainly here for the ultimate generation and the damage reduction. Glacial Colossus is our ultimate. This is good for group play, giving major vulnerability to any enemy hit. If you did want to mix these skills up or don't want to be a vampire, there are a few options that you can do. If you want to mix the skills up, here are a few options that you can do. The Skull can be changed out for Full Shock, and you can go with Crushing Shock to interrupt people, or False Pulse. Crushing Shock is more versatile and more useful in all honesty. Pulse has a tiny bit more damage. Alternatively, you can go down to Sigil Order and unlock Elemental Weapon. This will hit very similar damage to what Skull hits already, giving you some very neat passives down here. Skull, however, does give you 10% crit chance when the enemy is low. So there is a trade-off there. If for some reason you don't like the vampire, you don't want to be a vampire, and you want to drop Invigorate and Drain, this is obviously extra ultimate generation, so it's very useful to have. You could swap this though for the Destructive Staff Clench. So Destructive Clench, this is our stun. This works well, I've used this in duels. I just find that ultimate generation from Vampire Drain is better. You can also use this when people roll dodge as it's a channel. People can bash you out of this though, so there's trade-offs. For Elemental Drain, that will stay, don't really get rid of that. You could drop a Skeletal Arcanist and move it to the back bar and get rid of Necrotic Potency. If you did this, so you go to your Skeletal Arcanist, you move it across. You then free up the slot on your primary bar, and this allows you to run Inner Light, giving you extra max magicka, increasing your tooltips even further. That said, I personally prefer having Skeletal Arcanist on the front bar this time, because we get the 10% passive down the bottom. But more importantly, it gives us access to the extra ultimate generation, which we need now that Soul Assault has had a cost increase. As you can see, it's 175, so it's a lot more expensive than before. All in all, these are the skills that I would run. If you did change your ultimate on the back bar, you could go with the Bat Swarm if you were a vampire. You could go with the Sigil or the Temporal Guard. Failing that, you could also go with the Support Barrier skill, and I find that Reviving Barrier is better. And you can get Magicka Aid, which will give you an extra 10% Magicka if we started this on the back bar. That's Magicka Regeneration. So these are kind of the skills, what you can do to mix them up if you want to. For me though, this is what works best overall. Obviously test it yourself, find what is comfortable for you. Now for the gear, we are rocking Bloodspawn as you can see. Our sets however are different. If you don't have these sets, I would then run my old build, that is Necropotence, Crafty Alfiq and Bloodspawn. There is a build on the channel, so check it out. For this build however, we are running Spinners, Armour Master, Bloodspawn and 2 pieces Willpower. You'll notice the 2 pieces Willpower are active at all times on the front bar as well as the back bar, so they're still active and they're still active here. We also keep our Bloodspawn on at all times, so this again does not change, so that's always active at all times. Now to achieve this, we had to use Spinners and Armour Master. These sets work really well and allow this to happen. No other set combination is as good as this. Now for Spinners, this is kind of the best damage set for this kind of playstyle, where you do a front bar and a back bar push, freeing up 2 jewelry slots down here. Spinners is only 2 and 3 pieces on the back bar. When we switch to the front bar, you'll find that the same happens for Armour Master. It's only 2 and 3 pieces here. Now Armour Master is a very special set, because when you use a light armour skill, like so, you get a buff on your screen that gives you 5000 armour. This buff can be transferred to the front bar, still keeping it active. So it means you can take the benefit of Armour Master from one bar, move it to another bar, and because we're using Spinners, we don't need the penetration on the back bar, so we drop the penetration, and that gives us 1 spare slot there, that gives us a spare slot there, together that makes 2, and that's how we get willpower on our jewelries. To achieve this, you want to obviously have your weapon, Spinners, and then you want 3 body pieces. For me, I'm running Sash, Hands, and 1 jewelry. I went with a jewelry rather than Armour Master jewelry, as Spinners is cheaper to get. For the back bar, we use Sword and Shield, Armour Master, and then we need 3 body pieces, because we're not using any jewelry. So we've got chest, legs, and feet. By doing it this way, when we switch to the back bar, we then have 1, 2, 3 always active. The Sword and Shield then turn on 4 and 5. When we switch to the front bar, the same happens with Spinners. We've got 1, 2, 3 always active. The staff counts as 2 pieces, which then turns on 4 and 5, as you'll see here. So that's how this works, okay? You could drop Willpower, by the way, and run Blessing or Potentious. This will give you this will give you more damage reduction, and this is a really nice buff to have. If for some reason you didn't have Armour Master, you didn't have access to it, you could run Transmutation as a last ditch effort. You will, however, need to change a few skills and run a heal over time, probably rapid regen, because the Necromancer heals don't really proc transmutation easily. So that is kind of an option for you there, but for me, I said Armour Master is so much better. As for the front bar damage set, you can't change that in all honesty, it's just too good to give up. For me, this is the best combination that I have come up with so far. As for the traits, we have Nirnhound on the staff. I have tested Nirnhound sharpened and infused, and Nirnhound came out as most damage overall, even though sharpened gave us more pen, and that's because we have so much pen already. We want the shock damage enchantment. This will give us more burst. You could, however, go with the weapon damage berserk enchant that will give us more sustained damage and more damage on our delayed bursts, such as blast bones. As for our sword and shield, it is defending and impenetrable. The glyph on the sword can be whatever you like or a poison. As for the shield, you want Max Magicka. This will increase our dampen magic shield size. As for Bloodspawn, it's impenetrable, and that's the same for every armor piece down here. We run Tri-Stat on the big pieces, head, chest and legs, and on the small pieces we run Magicka, Magicka, Magicka and Magicka. For the jewellery we run Arcane on everything, and we run Magicka Recovery. And that is all of the gear, guys, in some detail. Hopefully that helps. As I said, it's slightly more complicated this time, but it's definitely worth doing. As for our consumables and Mundus stones, so on, Tri-Stat food, in all honesty, is the best food you can get. Tri-Stat potions work really well, or you could use Essence of Immovability, giving you CC immunity, health and Magicka. Off the top of my head, I believe it's Wormwood, Bugless and Columbine, maybe Mountain Flower, one of those two there. As for our Mundus stone, we are using the Apprentice. Having tested all the Mundus stones, the Apprentice came up in the middle. The Lover gave slightly more damage, but the Apprentice was better as it increased our heals. The Mage was the weakest out of the lot. If you are a high elf, as mentioned earlier, you want to change this to the Recovery Mundus, the Atronach, and then you'll be absolutely fine to run this. We are a vampire because we're using the Vampire Drain, and it also gives us more recovery. If you are not a vampire, and you do not want to be a vampire, then this does need to be recovery or you won't sustain easily. All of our points should be in Max Magicka if you haven't seen that already. Now for the champion points, guys. I'm going to go through pretty quick this time. Just pause it where you see fit. Hopefully that helps. I will note anything that's kind of important. If you can get a win running, that will make life a lot easier for you. 40 is actually the jump point erosion here. We just had 1 point spare, so that 1 point can go wherever you see fit, but you want 40 at least here. And that is the CP, guys. As I said, play it back, rewind it, pause it where you see fit. Hopefully that helps. Everything has been min-maxed as with all of my builds, so that will make you really tanky and do lots of damage. Now the last section in the video is normally about tips and tricks, and we're going to go through that quickly. The big thing I will say is blast bones can be buggy. So in order to help overcome that, our Ricochet Skull hits pretty hard, but because of all the penetration we have, we then make this hit quite hard, and then when blast bones does land, it's a nice amount of burst, but we're not reliant on it in order to do damage and get kills, as you'll see in the footage. You want to keep Elemental Drain up at all times, as well as Skeletal Arcanist. This will damage the target, that will then proc this, that means you get Magical Recovery, and you get Magical Recovery from this, so it just gives you lots of sustain. The Invigorating Drain is really nice for when you do Blast Bones, so you cast Blast Bones, Invigorating Drain, that will then stun them, and it gives Blast Bones time to actually land and hit the target. You can then do Ricochet Skull when they're kind of stunned to get an extra hit in, and then once they break free, go for another Drain if they happen to roll dodge, and that will hit them through the roll dodge. Alternatively, finish them off with Soul Assault. For the Battle Bar wise, to keep defensive and stay alive, armor buff, so which is shielded, which is also an armor buff thanks to Armor Master, and an Intensive Mender. You'll find that because you have so much resistance, your shield, although it's 6,200, it's worth significantly more because the armor that you have makes it really, really hard to take down. You then have Necrotic Potency, which you want to cast whenever you can, as this will give you more ultimate generation and a small heal. They have changed it recently so that you don't need to directly look at the corpse anymore, and it's more of an AoE around you. So you'll see that the Spirit Mentor here is about to die, and then the skill will highlight. I could look over here or I could look over here. I can still activate it. So it's kind of an AoE around you now. It is from where I am to that flag roughly. So it's a pretty decent AoE. It doesn't always track through buildings though. So again, I can go pretty far away and get the ultimate back. You can also do this between fights as well. So when you're running from A to B, just pop your Mentor up now and again. That will give you sustain and your Arcanist friend. And then when he drops down, push that, you get more ults. It's a cheeky way to reset your ultimate between the fights, especially in Cyrodiil. That's kind of the main tips and tricks. This video has been long enough as it is. If you did enjoy this video, then obviously like and subscribe and comment, and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss any future content. And with that said, guys, I'm going to jump off now. I'll catch you in the next one. So thanks for watching, take care, and bye.